Joining us now, former Ambassador Ann Patterson. Ambassador, great to have you.
Thank you so much, John. It's always a pleasure to be on your show. Yes, this actually should be on the front page because every time it comes up, these are two nuclear-armed countries, obviously. Maybe it's far away, so people don't concentrate on it, but it basically has been going on since 1947, since the partition of India and Pakistan. And the basic issue is that the Kashmir is a Muslim majority population, but at partition it was annexed to India because the princeling in charge was a Hindu and he basically gave it to India. They've gone to war twice over this, in 1965 and 1999, and Prime Minister Modi basically annexed this. And I think that's the right word. It's a strong word, but he annexed it a few days ago. And the Pakistanis are extremely upset. They're also upset, I think, because they've had a very difficult time getting international support for their position. So it's a dicey situation.
When you were ambassador to Pakistan, how important was this to the Pakistani leadership at that time?
It was very important. It was very important psychologically because frankly, they had been supporting some of the insurgents, well, really for decades.
Right.
And it was a symbol of national pride. The other issue, of course, is that India is their historic enemy, and as they see it. And so they feel particularly boxed in by India. India, of course, in fairness, is a runaway success story economically, and Pakistan is lagged behind. So there's a lot of economic jealousy there, too. But it's an important issue, particularly for the Pakistan Army.
So when you were ambassador to Pakistan, was that when Musharraf was there? Tell me, who was the...
Yeah, Musharraf was there, and Musharraf was basically president. He was also more importantly, head of the Pakistan military.
Right.
And he had provoked one of these last encounters with India over Kashmir on the Siachen Glacier. He was a very interesting guy, but he finally had to step down in favor of elections, and that was basically an initiative by the Brits and the Americans to sort of move toward a democratic solution. And Benazir Bhutto came back, and of course was assassinated not too long thereafter, and her husband took over as president, and her party took over as prime minister. There have been now 2 democratic transitions in Pakistan, but no one should be under any illusions that the Pakistan Army doesn't play a extremely important role in the political life of Pakistan.
So when we look at the annexation by the Indian government of Kashmir, which was a pretty bold move by their leadership, because they could have done this a long time ago, we stopped short of that. They suspended all the rights, basically, of the Kashmir people for all intents and purposes. Almost worse than what's going on in Palestine. I mean, they just took away everything, annexed it, majority Hindu nation, to Muslims. And so I guess the fear that a lot of us have is certainly that within the Pakistan elected government, the cooler heads prevail. But then we also know that there's tremendous influence over the government of the Pakistani military, which is very powerful, both on the ground and politically. And I know that some of those leaders, some of the military leaders, probably were very upset by this. And so it's almost a situation like you have with the Iranian Revolutionary, the IRA, right? The Iranian military sometimes acts independently of the government. Could the same thing happen here?
Well, that is sort of what happened in 1999 when Musharraf moved the military up there, and the civilian leader basically had to come to the United States and beg Bill Clinton to intervene and solve the situation for him. And that really was what happened then. I suppose it could happen now. It looks like they're trying, at least temporarily, to find some diplomatic solution, unsuccessfully trying to find some diplomatic solution. But yes, you could see that. You could see a very aggressive element in the Pakistani military because, frankly, it's a huge blow to their pride. And pride matters a lot in really most countries. So yes, you could see something like that. I don't know if I don't know the current leader of the Pakistan military as well as I knew, of course, the ones when I was there. So I don't know what his personality, or Musharraf was actually in charge of the special forces. So yes, you could see something like that happen. Now, I think an interesting question is why did Modi do this now? And there are a lot of theories out there. One, which I say, but I dismiss it, was when President Trump offered to intervene a few weeks back. I think that was just sort of a throwaway. But I think the more important issue is that the Indians saw that we were very close to a deal with the Taliban in Afghanistan, and that we'd need Pakistan's cooperation for that, and that U.S. relations with Pakistan would probably warm considerably because of that. So they decided to move now.
That is brilliant analysis. That, you know what, I hadn't thought of that. And I've not seen that either, Mrs. Ambassador, but I think that's it. They because everybody was saying, why now? I mean, there's nothing that happened. Obviously, they had planned this for some time, but they executed it when they thought, there was very little that we were going to be able to do because of the Taliban situation. And like you say, the cooperation from the Pakistan government that we need to get a deal with the Taliban so we can get the hell out of there. And of course, also looking at our politics, they're probably saying, okay, the president would like to get a deal so we can start taking our troops home before November 2020.
Exactly.
So the timing for them.
Exactly.
Right. So the time.
And people say that they're on the verge of a deal with the Taliban. And, there's some very contentious last minute, which of course is taking place in Doha, Qatar, the negotiations, that they're on the verge, Ambassador Khalilzad is on the verge of a deal with the Taliban, and we'll see how that comes out. But I think the president's instructions to him are pretty clear. Not that I'm privy to them, but to get our troops, or at least a large number of our troops, out of Afghanistan, yes, before the next election.
So, neither of us know the answer to this, so it's somewhat of a rhetorical question, but what do you think the president's position is going to be? Sometimes he's a little unpredictable on these things. He can't be happy about it, right? So, will he do nothing? Do you think he'll jawbone it? What do you think?
On the Kashmir thing, I think
Yes.
he'll basically keep his head down.
Right.
He's sort of a little unpredictable, but he's going to have all kinds of conflicting priorities here. One, his relation with Modi, from everything I could see, is first rate. And multiple administrations have reached out to India as a powerhouse, an economic powerhouse, investment powerhouse, but most importantly as a counterweight to China. And from everything I could see, President Trump's administration has done exactly the same. They've developed close ties with India because they see that India is an important strategic partner for our future. That doesn't mean we don't need relations with Pakistan too. So I suspect he'll just sort of play it cool. We'll see.
Well, he's in between a rock and a hard place, and I think this is why Modi, who, by the way, has proven, Ambassador Patterson, to be a very, very astute and formidable international leader. I mean, a lot of the things he does, his timing is right. He's aggressive, but he seems to know the geopolitical landscape. His instincts are pretty sound. I mean, if you look at what he did here, they wanted to do this for some time. He did it, and he does it at a time where the president, I think you're right, he's going to keep his head down because he's got a great relationship with Modi in India. They're the counterweight to China, especially what's going on right now with the tariffs.
Exactly.
He absolutely needs the full support of the Pakistani government and their regime right now in the Taliban negotiations to get troops out. and to fulfill one of the campaign promises he had going into 2020. So he's got these two allies that he's got to stay on great terms with, that are at odds with one another. And so sometimes you can't, whatever you do is wrong, so you do nothing. And I think that's what Modi banked on.
I think that's what, I think they'll make statements, statements about how there should be a peaceful resolution and no violence and all that kind of stuff. I mean, basically, basically statements that don't mean very much. But I suspect he'll stay out of the substance. And again, I agree with you entirely. I've been super impressed with Modi. And there's no question he's a Hindu nationalist, a very aggressive Hindu nationalist. But frankly, I watched this speech that he had made about Kashmir, and I thought it was extremely effective. Obviously, it was for the Indian public about why he was doing this, but he's extremely articulate and extremely cogent. And of course, let's also be fair. India has thrived under his rule.
I mean, it's tough to argue with the economic success that they've had. Their growth is unprecedented. Was it like 8 or 9% annually?
Yeah.
I mean, it's right now it's the envy of the world. We're at 3%, and we're doing handstands over it and saying this is the best economy in 5 decades. And they typically, India's been doing GDP growth 6, 7, 8, 9%. They go to 7, like it's a bad quarter for them. So they're having tremendous growth. They're educating their people. Also, he's put in a lot of education reforms, health reforms. They're spending a lot of money building roads, bathrooms. I mean, people forget there's a lot of parts of India don't have running water and things of that nature, don't have a road. They got dirt roads. So they've done a lot with infrastructure since Modi's been there. But he's a very effective leader, very convincing. And he's able to rally people, and that nationalist tenor that he has, coupled with a tremendous economy, has given him a lot of juice, no question.
And a lot of influence internationally. Let's not downplay that. I mean, again, this has been a high priority across a number of years for the United States to work with India. And when I was in Pakistan, I don't know the statistics now, but there were something like 70 million Indians still without electricity. So there are, very significant pockets of poverty still in India. But he's done a good job, as you say, about trying to resolve that and bring development to rural India. And the educational system, the production of engineers, the production of scientists has been really quite remarkable.
He also works the media well. He definitely took a page out of Erdogan's book, who is to me the two media giants in international relations are Trump and Erdogan. Erdogan is as good as Trump, if not better, in managing the media. I don't know how he's been able to figure that out in Turkey, but the way they handled the Jamal Khashoggi tragedy.
Yeah,
oh
amazing.
My God, that
just
was
amazing.
They should teach that in international media school at like Harvard. I mean, that was just unbelievable. And they have an independent media there. They have media that back him, and then they have media that are the opposition. The way he's handled that. I want to get to the Taliban for a second. We're with former U.S. ambassador to Pakistan and Egypt, Ann Patterson, and she was also Under Secretary of State to John Kerry for Asian Affairs for some time. And Mrs. Ambassador, the negotiations now in Afghanistan between the Taliban and the U.S., Qatar playing now a major role in this. They're in Doha meeting. Where's this going, and what kind of a role does the Emir of Qatar have, and how are they involved in this?
Well, Qatar has been the host for this, and that was a huge, frankly, benefit to the United States, because obviously the meetings couldn't take place in Afghanistan or Pakistan because the war was still underway in many respects. So Qatar sort of, and this has also been going on for a while, Qatar stepped up to the plate and said, "We'll host it." I'm sure they're covering every last expense of the negotiation. I understand that when things sort of break down, they don't exactly stick their nose in, but they try and be helpful. So they're playing an extraordinarily positive role on this. I suspect, too, although I don't know this, that they'll use their considerable financial resources to help the process along. You all might remember that when Bo Bergdahl was released, they took essentially custody of a bunch of Taliban as well. So this is a very important diplomatic role for the United States to enable Ambassador Khalilzad to have a safe place for negotiations, to have a helpful government, and to, again, move this process forward.
How forward do you think it'll move?
I think it's pretty close from everything I hear, that they're on the verge of a deal. Now, I suspect the deal will be a little rocky to implement, and again, this is where Qatar will come in. All these deals have problems, and Qatar will, I'm almost certain, will help implement the deal, which will be just as important as reaching it. You know, some people won't observe the ceasefire. Troops won't get out as fast as they had promised. And Qatar can play an ongoing role in ensuring that the deal is implemented, which will be, in some respects, even more important.
All right. We will see how that plays out. We're out of time. I want to thank former ambassador, U.S. ambassador to Pakistan, to Egypt, Undersecretary of State to Secretary John Kerry, at the time Asian Affairs, and our good friend Ann Patterson. Ambassador Patterson, it's always great to have you on. I always learn so much. And thanks for shedding light on that Indian Kashmir situation. And your analysis, brilliant. You ought to write a paper or something to put that out, because I've heard that from no one.
Thank you, John. It's always a pleasure to be on and talk to your listeners.
When are you going to write? When am I going to see you write a book?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe sometime. Thank you.
I'll be your first buyer. Thanks for being with us.